Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Patriots Healthcare Podcast. And I'm here again today with Tom Force, owner and founder of the Patriot Group and the Force Law Firm. Today, we're talking about how to defend insurer demands and refund requests on providers and facilities, which is a very hot topic now. So, Tom, do you want to give us a little information on how we go about defending these?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. I'm very skeptical about these things. I think these insurance companies get away with a lot with respect to these kind of refund demands and audits. So you have two types, right? You have the single refund demand that's generally handled most of the time by an insurance company collection vendor like Cotiviti.
I've heard of them.
For example, United Healthcare Recovery Services.
Yep.
All right, and they want money back on a particular claim.
On one claim.
So those are a little bit easier to handle. You're dealing with one claim, and obviously, we'll talk about how to defend those. The more troubling one, Meredith, is the special investigation audits, right?
Okay.
So in those situations, the carrier is not looking for just like one claim money back. They're looking for hundreds, if not millions of dollars back. So it's very important to understand when those audits start. Okay.
Scary.
So that's what I really want to talk about. On a regular single refund demand, you have to remember one thing, that all I would like to say about that, it's a retroactive denial, right?
Right.
So that means you're going to handle a refund on a single claim like you would a denial, and you're going to appeal it in writing. And if you want suggestions on how to appeal, look at, I think we talked about that in our last podcast, how to file an appeal. And so you need to appeal those, and you should appeal it to the vendor that's demanding it, like the collection vendor, Cotiviti, or United Healthcare Recovery, but also to the insurance company's provider appeals. And you make sure you tell them they're not allowed to take the money back while the appeal is pending. So that's that. But I want to really spend more time talking about the really dangerous ones, and they start as follows. As you know, the carrier will send a request for 10 records, 50 records. I've seen as much as 100 records.
For all different patients.
Many patients, and they may go back several years. You see, because the insurance companies take the position that there is no statute of limitation.
Right.
It's not correct. They say that because the plans are self-funded, that ERISA, which governs self-funded medical claims, doesn't have a statute of limitation. But what they don't tell you is the courts defer to state law, and the states have refund overpayment laws. And, so there really is a statute of limitation. So anyhow, they'll go back 7, 8, they go back 10, I've seen 15 years, right? And they'll ask for records, and sometimes they know what they're looking for, and sometimes they're just doing a fishing expedition. And what this is about is the insurance carrier wants something from the provider. Maybe it's an out-of-network provider, Meredith, that they want to go in-network,
okay.
right? Can't get the provider in-network because in-network, the provider won't agree because it's like 1/100th of their out-of-network reimbursement.
Correct.
So you know what we'll do? We'll audit them. And maybe we don't know why we're auditing. We're going to look for something and find something, right? Okay. Maybe they want money back. They allege fraud. I can tell you 9 times out of 10, I very rarely see actual insurance fraud.
Right.
But they'll allege fraud.
Because why not?
But do you know why they allege fraud? 2 reasons. You know why?
Please tell me.
One is they want to scare the bejesus out of the provider.
Right. And it
comes
usually
from
works.
Special Investigative Fraud Department,
It's
right?
terrifying. I would be terrified.
And number 2, legally, fraud is an exception to the statute of limitation. So if let's say in New York, you can go back 24 months on a refund request, but if there's fraud, you can go back forever.
Okay.
Forever.
Gotcha.
So they always allege fraud even though fraud doesn't exist, right? So we're going to talk about what do you do when you have these type of, how do you defend against them?
How do you get them to go away?
So the first thing is, and I think it's something that when a provider gets one of these, especially when it comes from a fraud unit, it's scary, right?
Terrifying.
Don't panic, number one. It's about money.
Always.
They can accuse you of fraud. Like I said, very rarely in my career, I defend these all the time.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
Right. Once in a blue moon.
Yeah. So like it's about money. I'll give you a quick example. I had a client a couple Christmases ago. On Christmas Eve, he received an audit from Cigna for $2.7 million on Christmas Eve. Called me up, literally tears in the eyes. And I looked at what the audit was asking for, and I said, nah, they really want probably $200,000. That's what they want. Have a good Christmas. Don't worry about it. He goes, how do you know? I said, I've handled a couple of these. And I said, if we ever have to pay, we can probably extend it 24 months, 36 months, interest-free. It's not going to hurt you too bad. And that's what happened eventually a year later. But anyhow, so the first thing is don't panic. It's about money. Second of all is don't try to handle these yourself. All right? Hire someone, either a firm like ours, a law firm, or someone that has experience doing this. You can fall into traps. For example, we're handling one in my office right now where the client was trying to handle it and made a serious admission about one of the services. And now they hired us, and we're having a difficult time making the arguments on that particular service because the client already admitted to basically the liability there. Right. So that's be very careful. The other thing, if you're subpoenaed by a regulatory authority, never go without an attorney. Never. You got to remember, these regulatory authorities, most of the time it's civil penalties, but they can also put you in jail. Okay? So, never. I had one just last week where a regulator in New Jersey was subpoenaing a client. Never do that. So, but the good news is these things are definitely defensible, and most of the time, when the carriers are looking for money, they're really looking for maybe 1/10 of what they're asking for. Right. And a lot of times, either they're fishing or you're being dragged into with a wide net because some other carrier did something wrong.
Are you seeing more and more of these?
Yeah, the last 2 years, it's crazy. You are too, aren't you? I mean, it's crazy, right?
That's why I was asking.
So what do you do, right? So remember, just like the single refund, these are all retroactive denials when they ask for money. Originally, they're not asking for money, right? So what do, right? I say cooperate with them. I don't think you should ignore them.
No.
Unless you have something to hide, then hire a counsel. But hire counsel and provide them, but only provide them exactly what they're entitled to, and don't provide them anything beyond the statute of limitation.
Of what they're looking for.
All right. A lot of providers will say, well, HIPAA, the HIPAA doesn't really apply to this. The patients have contracts with the carriers, and they agree to cooperate with these kind of audits. So it's not really, but what you do is, provide the records, but before you provide the records, you really need to know what they're looking for. So I always call and say, hey, dude, what are you really looking for?
Exactly.
So I can focus on it. I'm not going to provide the records if I know they're looking for some medical necessity issue concerning a certain procedure without maybe having a medical expert or compliance expert look at it first for me to see if there's a big issue. Right. If I find a big issue, I talk to the client, maybe we'll recommend settlement. But if
there are options.
There are options there, but 9 times out of 10 I'll provide the records, only what they're asking for. I never volunteer information. And then if they, a lot of times it goes away and sometimes it doesn't. They'll ask for money. All right. You have to file written appeals. You appeal the vendor, like Cotivity, United Healthcare, Recovery, the law firm, that Hanley firm is out there. But you also appeal to the provider appeals department. I send all of these certified mail. And, I raise a lot of defenses such as statute of limitations. That's one of the first things, they can't go back 7 years if they're like in, New York, where the state law says 24 months. I make the argument and I provide cases to show them that, hey, man, there's no statute of limitation for a self-funded plan. And these are self-funded plans governed by an employer-sponsored plan. But this, our federal court says if there's no statute of limitation in federal law, defer to state law. All right, so they can't go back 100 years.
Right.
So that's the first thing I say. And, I'll appeal, everything I could possibly think of. But I sent a written appeal letter. I make it very clear that they can't cross-plan offset, right?
Which is what they love to do.
Cross-plan offset. What is that? Mm-hmm. That's taking back the money they believe they're owed on unrelated claims. A lot of jurisdictions allow that. So I tell them they're not allowed to do that, and you're allowed to request information because under state law, but certainly under federal law, you're entitled to a full and fair review. That's why you have appeal rights on denials.
Of course.
So I ask them for everything in the kitchen sink. Everything, including the plans.
Right.
Because if let's say they're denying based on medical necessity, it's a retroactive denial. So I look at everything. First of all, look at the claims. We talked about statute of limitations. Maybe we can cut the claim in half.
Right.
Did they pre-authorize?
A lot of times they
Right.
are pre-authorized.
So I asked the client, can I get the
Yeah.
pre-auth? So in other words, you had your pre-auth team pre-authorize this.
Right.
Then before you paid it, you asked for medical records.
Right.
And now this is the third time you're looking for medical records. Now you're saying, retroactively denied. I'm skeptical.
Right.
And I put that in writing, right? So, and I'll ask them for plan documents. If is there an exclusion in the plan? 9 times out of 10, it's not. They'll just have a generalized exclusion relating to medical necessity,
Right.
for example.
Right.
That's
Which will help our defense, right?
Yeah.
If that's there.
And
in the plan
don't let me
document.
forget it. Before we leave, I want to talk about out-of-network balance bill for fee forgiveness audits. But anyhow, you have to put it in writing, request as much as possible, and you can delay these things forever. And the more nuisance you are to the entity that's requesting the audit, the better chance you have of them either ignoring, putting it on the bottom of the pile, or maybe resolving it at some point with you. Now, I do want to talk a little bit, Meredith, because if you're an out-of-network provider, meaning you don't have a contract with the insurance company, the hottest thing right now is balance bill audits, fee forgiveness audits, right?
You have to be careful with that, right?
Okay, so what is that? If you're out-of-network, technically, according to the carriers, you're responsible for billing the balance bill, the difference between the charge and payment. So this is what the carrier, it's unbelievable that they could do this, but they know that most large surgery practices that bill $100,000 charges, they're not balance billing their patients.
not.
They get a $30,000 payment. If there's a $5,000 deductible, they'll
They
bill
collect that, right?
but they're not
And
collecting
gonna write off the
$65,000,
difference.
right?
No, of course.
So the carriers know that, so they do these audits, and you have to be careful. They'll say, we want medical records, but we also want statements and patient ledgers of collections. That should tip off its balance bill. So those, listen to me very carefully, those are very, very defensible. And the biggest culprit of these is Cigna.
Cigna is the biggest culprit of a lot of issues nowadays.
Yeah, but they're a big culprit on fee forgiveness. So the way you handle that, if you haven't billed patients for at least the cost share, you bill the patients for the cost share. All right? So what do I mean by that? EOB says there's a deductible and co-insurance. You bill that.
Deductible.
I'm not so sure that there's a requirement to balance bill. I think it's discretionary for the most part. However,
discretionary, of
but if
course.
the EOB says that this is the cost share
That
responsibility,
has to be billed to patients always.
bill that to the patient. If it doesn't indicate that the balance bill is a patient response, how would it look if you're billing for the balance bill, but the EOB says the patient only owes $5,000?
Correct.
You'll get accused of fraud, right?
Absolutely.
So I say it doesn't matter if the carrier knows that you're billing just because of the audit, bill them anyhow. And then let the carrier know that you're billing for the cost share. I also like to appeal every claim. And I think that's like a thorn in their side. I have a client right now that has over 1,500 claims. I'm appealing every single one. When I
Gotta
appeal
love
it,
it.
I'm basically saying the denial is not talking about balance bill. It's talking about holding the patient legally obligated to pay. So my appeal letter says, number
love that.
one, we have a financial agreement where the patient agrees to pay non-covered services and their deductible co-insurance, checkbox.
Right.
And we sent a statement for cost share.
Right.
And in this instance, this client, we actually sent a balance bill letter too. All right?
So we covered everything.
So I'm saying, like, we're holding the patient legally obligated to
Right.
pay the
Of
claim.
course.
All
Absolutely.
right. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking that appeal letter and sending it to the patient and saying, hey, this is nonsense. Call Cigna
Call
and
your
get,
insurance
and let me
company
know what they
and
say.
make a sting.
And then the other thing I'm doing, which I know no one else is doing, I'm appealing to the ultimate fiduciary, which is the employer. I'm sending employer letters.
That's amazing.
So that's why it's important when you have a financial agreement, make sure that the patient agrees that you're allowed to communicate with the employer and you're not going to have a HIPAA violation. And that's something, that's just a small change in your front end patient forms. But I do that and I've gotten claims paid because guess what? These carriers don't want us going to JP Morgan Chase and Blackstone.
Of course not.
That's their client.
Yeah.
And when the client gets upset
They
and the
want to change
patients are
carriers,
upset,
and then, yep.
all of a sudden they call you up and say, you know what, we'll make an exception, we'll pay this one. And we've gotten for that client a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars of claims paid. But on balance bill audits, please consult me when you get an audit. Those are very defensible and they're kind of scary because they're always looking for $6 or $7 million and it's
Absolutely.
total nonsense.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. That's been very educational. And hopefully, if you're a provider, God forbid, in an audit, you could take away from this a lot. So,
And the one last thing I want to say about don't forget about single audits. Always appeal them like they're denials.
100%.
Retroactive denials, never ignore them. Always appeal them.
Worst thing you could do is
Always
ignore
appeal
them.
them. And remember, on the single cases that are small, you can always go to small claims court. I have a client in Oregon that does that. When I appeal it and I tell them not to take the money back and they take the money back, he goes to small claims court and
Really?
wins and recovers money. And then he gets a contact over there so that the next time they try to
It's
play,
easier.
he can just call them up and
Right.
say, I'm going to file a
Right.
small claim, So
That's
I think
great.
in revenue, you got to be real creative in order
Love
to
it.
win.
Well, thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Meredith.
Yep.
Thank you for listening.
Have a great day, everyone.